All right. So from my understanding of this README, all we're doing today is we're creating a couple of classes, one named student, one named staff, and the other one named school. They're even giving us the classes to ourselves. It looks like we have a CSV file with data, so we're going to have to utilize the CSV dict reader to be able to grab that information. After we grab that information, it looks like we're creating a couple of class methods. And in those class methods, we're just going to simply read through the CSV file and actually create instances using Kwargs. So here we can see what would come back from the dict reader. And then we can see them creating an instance utilizing the keyword method, right? Where they're basically destructuring this dictionary so that each key can match one of the initializer variables, such as name, which is they don't show it here. But they can match one of the initializer variables and then assign the value to that key, to that variable. So let's start working through this. School. It looks like they actually gave us the classes, which is great in my opinion. So I'm just going to simply kind of copy and paste these classes in here just to make sure everything's working. Okay, in my runner, I have this information. Let me check my runner. Okay, and now we can see that my runner was able to print Ridgemont High. All right, what's next? Let me take a look here. So it's able to run the runner. We take a look at school. That worked. And now it's telling me, hey, you should probably create a student and a staff as well. All right, well, we could do those real quick. So let's make touch student.py and touch staff.py. And then I'm just going to copy and paste those as well. So here we have student and here we have staff. I'm going to copy student. Come over to student.py, paste it. Then I'm going to copy staff, come over to staff.py, and paste it as well. Okay, it looks like now I have my 3 classes. Does anyone have any questions or run into any issues so far? Everyone keeping up okay? If you guys don't tell me to go slower, I'm not going to go slower. So,
Hey, do you mind if we actually just take like a quick minute? I don't know if anyone else, but I was still getting set up.
oh yeah, of course. We can take a little bit. Let's go ahead. Let me pause the recording and then let's just give it 2 minutes for everyone to. Okay, so now we all have this class of school. We have this class of staff, and we have the class of student. And if we look at our runner, we're able to run our runner and get the name. Oh, hello. That's not what I meant to do. Hopefully that didn't rewrite. Okay. And if we run our runner, we can see the name of the school showing up on the terminal. All right. So now let's take a look at the directions. Let's see what's next. Okay, so it says create these 2 classes. And it seems like now what we're supposed to do is create a method that will essentially load all of these staff and students from the CSV data. Okay, so let's start with staff real quick. And it looks like this is going to be a class method because it's going to create instances. So we'll say class method and we'll just call it all staff. All right, since it's a class method, it's going to take in CLS. And then I know I need to import CSV. So import CSV. Okay, well, now the question is, which one of those is it that I need? So CSV dict reader. Looks like we have it here. Let's see. With open, that's the path. Reader, I don't think I need that. That's not it. Let's see.
I think the quote plus quote allows you to read and write freely.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so it looks like we found it here. Here we see that we can import CSV. And then within the function, we can open the CSV, tell it the new line, use the CSV dict reader, and then grab each individual row. So let's see what that looks like. I'm gonna go ahead and copy this information. Come on over and paste it. So now I see with open names.csv. Well, that's not what I need. I need it to go to this directory. I need it to open up data and take a look at staff.csv. All right. After that, it's going to do new file, .csv file. It's going to say the reader, go through the reader. And now let's go ahead and print row. Okay, this should all work fine. So let's test it out. Let's see if the actual method works. Let's call all staff really quick. Let's do Python staff.py. Okay, so that's working. All right, we can see it happening here. We see that we have a dictionary that's being created with the key of name, has the student's name, key of age, has the student's age, etc., etc. So everything's working great. But now we just need a place to store all these instances. So let's say staff is equal to an empty list. And then I'm just going to say new staff is equal to staff, or actually we could just CLS. And then I'm just going to utilize the star Kwargs method. So let's say row. Then after that, all I'm going to do is append it to that list. So append new staff. And then once I'm done with this open function and it closes, I'm just going to return staff. And just to make sure it all works, let me just go ahead and print staff really quick so that we can see that we have a list of instances. So let's clear that. We run it, and we can see that we have a list of instances. Okay, so there's the method for all staff. Does anyone have any questions over how this works?
Hey, Francisco, for this one, so I'm only on my laptop. I don't have a second monitor and it's kind of hard to keep up. Will we have access to this after the fact so that we can kind of just pay attention to what's going on?
What do you mean? But yes, this is all being recorded and being thrown up on YouTube. Is that what you're referencing to?
Yeah, I guess more so the notes so that we can just copy and paste later.
Oh, yes, definitely. Everything will be thrown up to GitHub as well for notes purposes.
Sweet, thank you.
Of course. Any other questions?
Yeah, Francisco, could you just briefly explain that star, it's a Kwargs argument or whatever it's called, what that
Yeah, that was my question too.
Yeah, definitely. So when we create a class, usually we have to do something like this, right? We create a class and then we put the name of that person. So let's say, let me take a look at the initializer actually, just to make sure I don't forget anything. Okay, so there's the initializer, right? So we have the name, Diana, age, 2, role, staff, or student, I guess, employee ID, and then we have password, right? So that's typically how we would create an instance. Now, what if these arguments were out of order? Well, if these arguments were out of order, I would have to specify, hey, the name is Diana, and then maybe this could stay here, maybe this could say age, but then this portion right here, right, maybe this is out of order, so now I have to say role is equal to this, and maybe this is the password, and this is the ID, right, or employee ID, sorry. Right, so this would be another way that I could do it if everything was out of order, right? Now, the benefit of working with the dictionary is that when I'm working with a dictionary, instead what I have is a dictionary that looks something like this. I have role, and then that's gonna say student, and this is just an example. I know that it's supposed to say staff, name, Diana, age, 2, and then password, whatever that is, and then employee ID. And whatever that is, all right? So now this is what my dictionary looks like, or what I'm actually pulling out from the, oh no, where'd it go? It's gone now. All right, this is what I'm actually pulling out from the CSV file. All right, I'm pulling out a dictionary that looks like this. It has each individual staff with name, and then the key of name, and then the value being the value of each staff, right? And it's filling out those values. Well, what happens then is maybe it's not in the correct order. And if we take a look at the staff, we see how it comes name, age, role, employee ID, and password. But if I take a look at my initializer, oh, it's actually in the correct order. Well, that's a bad example. So both the CSV and the CSV file and the initializer are in the correct order. But I'm making my life simpler, right? Because rather than calling each individual value by the key, saying like dot get role, dot get name, dot get et cetera, or even just passing the dot values in here, I can destructure the dictionary by utilizing the star start method. So what this does is when it passes it into the initializer knows it's looking for a name. So it goes into the dictionary, it looks for the key of name, and then assigns Diana to the name, essentially creating this under the hood. Then when it looks for age, it does the same thing. It goes for the key of age, grabs number 2, and then creates this functionality under the hood. And so on for each individual key until it has all of its arguments. Does that make sense? I guess a better question would be, does anyone have any questions about how that works?
I guess I do. You said it does it under the hood. So on line, that's line 20, what it's doing under the hood, is it right?
Yeah, so this is the dictionary that gets passed into it and gets destructured, and then line 20 is what's happening under the hood. It's like, oh, okay, you want to destructure this? Let me grab these keys, create them into my initializer values, and let me grab these values and assign it as the value for that method.
Okay, that makes sense. I got it.
Awesome.
So it's just taking something that's out of order and putting it into order, right?
It's not necessarily putting it into order. It's just grabbing whatever values it needs straight out from the dictionary, right? It's kind of, think of it as a looker function. It says, hey, I need a name, goes into a dictionary, finds the key of name, and grabs that information. Does that make sense, Sean?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. And then I think, Eric, you had a question?
Yeah, it was somewhat related to that. I guess the ordering it's going to put it in is based on how we write the init method, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay.
All right. Awesome. So now we talked about destructuring. We talked about star Kwargs. We have all this information. We're able to run staff. Okay, good. We have all the things that we need from staff. Now we want to create the same exact method for students, right? So let's go ahead and go over to the student PY, and let's actually just copy this so far because it's going to look pretty much exactly the same. So we go over to student. We paste this, and then we want to make sure we import CSV. Okay. So now you guys walk me through creating this class. So right now we have a method called all staff. Do we want to call this all staff, or what do we want to call this?
All students.
Great. So I'm going to go ahead and call this all students. All right, still class method. Should this still be named students? I mean, should this still be named staff?
Students.
Right. And now here comes the with open function. So I'm telling it, hey, inside of the current directory that I'm in, so if I run ls I can see the files that are in the current directory that I'm in. I want you to go inside the directory of data. So it goes into data. So now let's run ls data. And I see that I only have these two files in there. And now I'm telling it inside of data, I want you to grab the staff.csv. Is that the correct file that I wanted to grab?
We want students, so CSV.
Nice. So let's go to students.csv. Okay, so now it's gonna it's gonna create a line, gonna go through root dict reader, it's gonna create a row for each line. Okay, what's next? What do we want to do now?
I believe we'd want to do the same, so we would do new underscore student equals CLS parentheses, and then we do our, is it called a Kwarg? Is that what you call this?
Yeah, Kwargs.
Kwargs, so yeah, and we do Kwargs row,
All right.
and then student dot append to new student.
Nice. Do we want to return anything or print anything from this?
Yeah, so yeah, we'd want to return our list that we just append to the students list.
Nice. And let's also print it just so that we can take a look at it. Okay, let's go ahead and call this method to make sure it works. Okay, and there we can see that if I run in the student, we can see that there's student objects actually being created and saved onto a list. Awesome. So it looks like we got that working. We're able to grab all of the information. We're able to use dict reader to create a dictionary and then utilize the star Kwargs method to create instances. All right, let me take a look at the README here. Okay, factor with dict Kwargs, how it works. Okay, we already talked about that. Okay, so now it looks like we just have some folder restructuring, right? We want to put this data stuff in classes. Okay, so I want to create a folder named classes. And inside of classes, I want to move school. Yep. I want to move staff. And I want to move student. Okay. So once I run all of those, it's telling me, hey, you need to fix it so that we can call everything from the school. And then we need to fix the import statement. All right, easy. Okay, let's take a look here. All right, so in our runner, we run into our first issue. We can see that it's no longer able to identify school. If I run Python runner, I get an error. It's telling me, hey, there's no such thing as school. Like, I don't know what the school file is you're referencing to. Why is that happening?
We moved into a folder.
Yeah, I moved it into a folder named classes. So I probably have to say, hey, from classes.school, import school. And now when I run my runner, it still works fine. Okay, so that takes care of that portion. Now, if we move into the school file, we can see that it's trying to call the staff and it's trying to call the students. So we probably need to import both of those classes. So let's say from school, staff, import staff, and from student, import student. And then simply, we're just going to replace the staff with staff dot all staff and the students with staff dot all students. Oh, hello. Okay.
Hey, sorry, Francisco, do you mind if we take another quick pause so we can set up those folders?
Yeah, definitely. Just wait a little bit. Go ahead and pause the recording. All right, so let's talk about some imports real quick. Jesus. There you go. Okay, so when it comes to imports, it's a little weird, right? We have our parent directory, and in here we have a file named runner. And then we have another directory. Well, this directory is now named classes. Now in runner PY, or sorry, inside of classes, we have another three. So we have, what is it, student? Probably don't want that.
Staff and school.
Thank you. Staff.py. And we have school.py. Okay, so now in runner, right, the runner needs to know where these classes are located. And when I run Python runner.py, Python is strictly only looking at runner.py. It's not looking anywhere else. It's only looking at the references on runner.py. All right. So in runner.py, we specify, hey, I want you to grab from classes.school. I want you to import school. And it does that, right? So then Python says, oh, okay, you want me to take a look over here. You want me to take a look at the school. Fine, I could do that, no problem. But then when it takes a look at the school says that it also needs to reference staff. But then the runner says, wait a minute, right? If I just have from staff, import staff, remember everything's in reference to the runner, right? So it's as if this import statement was in runner.py. So now with that said, does the runner know about staff? No, right? It has no idea where staff is located. So instead, I have to actually specify, hey, you need to go inside of classes and grab staff. Right? So then it says, oh, okay, well, now I'm the runner. And I see that you also want me to go inside of staff. So let me take a look at there. All right. And then school also tells it that it needs access to student. But as we've seen before, if I say from student dot import student, the runner is going to freak out. It's going to say, wait a minute, I'm the runner. There's no such thing as student next to me. The only thing next to me is classes. And it's going to tell me there's an error. It's going to say, I have no idea what you're talking about. So I have to tell it from classes dot student import student. And then that's when it says, oh, I see. So you want me to go into the classes directory and then grab the student file to import the student class. Does that make more sense, Brian?
Well, I feel like I understand why it would need to be specified in the runner. But it's still, so I guess is the reason that it needs to be specified in school because school is sending data back and forth to the runner?
Yeah, so everything's in reference to the runner, right? Because when I run that Python command and I'm running a file, so I'm running a Python script, it's happening from the runner, right? So although this import statements in student and staff and school are inside of these files, they're not being ran in these files. They're being ran in the runner. Right? So even though these two import statements down here are technically here where school is located, they're not being ran here. They're being ran down here with the runner. And that's why we have to specify it that way. Okay, I see you in the chat saying that makes sense. All right. Awesome. So now we did some debugging. Everyone should be up to speed. Let's go ahead and try to finish portion 1 of today. So let's see, what else do we have left on our README? So on our README, we went through step 2, refactor, make sure you're able to grab through all the employees. Okay, we did all of that. Yep, we applied that information. We did our folder restructure, and we created our loading data. Okay, and now it tells us to just try it out. All right, so let's try it out. Let's see, we have print name, and now let's print school dot students, and let's print school dot staff. If I clear this and I run the runner, so I see Richmond High, which is the name. I see a list of classes, which is all of my students, and we can see that they're student objects. And then I see a list of staff, which is all of my staff, and I can see that they are staff objects, all coming from within the CSV file. Okay, and it looks like that actually completes part 1 of today's lecture. So does anyone have any questions over anything we covered, including import statements? Why in staff we still, so after we talked about import statements, I'm sure that we can understand why we have only 1 period here, because this function is running from the runner. It's not running from this file. It's still all running from the runner. All right, so it's saying, hey, from the runner, from the same directory where the runner is located, I want you to go into data, and I want you to grab the staff.csv, right? Even though it's here, the code is written here, it's not actually being processed, ran, or compiled in here. It's all being ran within the runner.py. Yeah, are there any questions over anything that I covered? Or anything that we went over? Go ahead, Chen.
Yeah, I'm actually not, mine's not working now. I'm not sure what I did. Can I just take a look at just the top of each file again? Just to make sure I'm importing correctly.
Yeah,
All right, so that is school.
what does the error say?
It's no file or directory when I run runner.
For which files?
When I run runner, it says
Right.
let's see, can't open. Yeah, just it can't open runner.py.
Run an ls in your terminal.
Okay.
Is runner.py inside of that?
Oh,
list?
you know what? I'm in the wrong one. That's it. Sorry.
Of course. Yeah, no problem at all. All right, if there are no questions, let's go ahead and take a 10-minute break. I'll push this code up to GitHub. That way you guys could also copy and paste it if you need to over the next 10-minute break. And then we'll tackle part 2 of the lecture altogether after that 10-minute break. So currently right now it's 9:50. Let's come back at 10 o'clock to continue pushing forward. Thank you so much, everyone. Okay, we just finished up part 1 of this assignment. Let's move on to part 2. So I just finished reading part 2. Part 2 seems pretty straightforward. All it's asking us to do is actually apply this menu and then just add 2 features into it. So applying this menu, what would that look like? And where would that belong? Where would we want this menu to happen?
The
In
runner.
the runner.
Okay, easy peasy. So let's go into the runner. Let's create maybe a while loop, right? Let's just say while true. Or I guess we could use recursion. No, it's easier if we could just use while true. Okay, so while true, and let's say we run an input function, and that input function has 3. Let's copy that. Now let's just attach this to something called choice. Okay. So now if I run my runner. Nope, not in the correct directory. There we go. We can see that's gonna give me this information, and I probably should press enter there. Okay, and then I could type in whatever I want. It's not gonna stop. No matter what numbers I choose, it's never gonna stop. And that's because I didn't put in a stopping process. So let's apply that stopping process. Let's say if choice is equal to what? What do we want to check if choice is equal to?
5.
5. And I think it actually gives us directions on what it wants us to say once we quit. I think it's at the bottom. Nope, doesn't give us directions. So I guess we'll just say goodbye, maybe. Print. Goodbye. And then we'll break. Okay, so now if I run this, I can type in whatever I want, nothing happens, I can make a selection. But the moment I run 5, it tells me goodbye and it quits. Okay, so I just made my quit functionality, checked. All right, now we have the list all students function. How can we apply that? Let's see. So this all tells me about the runner. When it tells me to list all students, it says, hey, there should be a method named list all students, and it should be triggered when you make the choice one. And that method should return the following. All right, so it looks like it returns a numbered list with the student's name and then the student ID next to it. Okay. So now where should I create that method? This method of list students, right? Should it live in the school or should it live in the student file?
Student and then inherit it to school.
We could. So if I were to put it in the student file, it would essentially have to be a class method, right? Because think about it. Does the student file have the ability to, or I guess if I were to create a method within the student file, how would I iterate through this list? I wouldn't be able to, right? Go ahead, Cody.
Oh, I was gonna try to give a shot at the answer. Like, do you need like a getter for the student list, and then that will be used inside of school?
Yeah, so maybe we could go to school, right? We have this self.students. We don't necessarily have to create an actual getter and setter with the app property, but what we can do is actually create a method that will return all of those students. So let's say def, I think it's list students, right? What it's looking for, let me make sure. Yeah, it's list students. Okay, so def list students. This is going to take in self because there needs to be an instance of a school in order for this to happen. Okay, now how could I iterate through the list? Because we know that this is equal to a list of student instances. Right? So how can I iterate through the student list and then print out each individual student name and ID along with the current number that I'm on?
Create a representative number and then also have a counter on your init for increasing one every time you add a student.
Yeah, that's a good method as well. I think I'm gonna try the enumerate function just to get us all used to it. So let's say for stud in self.students. And actually, we want enumerate. And so now that's going to give us the index and it's going to give us the student. Okay. So now what I want to do, what do I want to print? It's obviously going to be an F string. So the first part, it says that it wants a number. So currently I have index. How could I create that number of 1 through 6 utilizing this index?
Would you want to do INDX plus 1
Okay, so
or
index,
IDX?
perfect. Okay, so that gives me the number. The next portion is the student name. So how can I get that?
Should be like self.name.
Well, self.name would be the school's name.
Stud.name.
What
Let's make sure that's the correct thing. Yep, we have that. And then the last thing we need is the school ID, it seems. So now I can press space. How do I get the student's school ID?
Is it
Stud.
also stud dot school ID? Oh, sorry.
Dot school ID. Nice. So now if I take a look at the preview, it looks like that should work correctly, right? We have the number with a period, the name, and then the school ID. Okay, so now we created the method, but it's not being applied to our runner just yet. So currently our runner can handle if the choice is 5. Well, what if the choice is 1? What do I need to do in that? So if choice is equal to 1. What do we need to do?
Wouldn't you have to call list students from school?
Okay, so I would call school list students. All right, let's see what that looks like. I run my runner, I make the choice 1. And after I make the choice 1, oh, that's my choice. I was freaking out. I was like, where did this 1 come from? But okay, so that's my choice that I submitted. And then afterwards we can see we have 1 with Lisa and their student ID, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 followed with their student ID. Great. Okay, so that's working. That feature is done. Before we continue pushing forward, is everyone up to speed? Do I need to go a little bit slower? How's everyone doing on their side? Here, can I get a thumbs up emoji like on your screen if you're all caught up?
Can you show the list students function just one more time?
List students function, that is student.py. Nope, it's not. It's in school.py. Here you go. Okay, I see 2 people that are caught up, so I'm assuming everyone else isn't.
Did you like copy and paste the list of students and their student IDs somewhere? Or is that coming from the CSV reader?
That's coming from the CSV reader, right? So if we look at student is utilizing the method of all students to be able to open the CSV reader and create instances, right, of students from the CSV file. That then gets placed into a list, and that list is the return value of this method. Well, in school, we're calling that method and then assigning that return value to an attribute named self.students. All right, and that's why I'm saying that this right here, student.allStudents, is equivalent to saying, hey, self.students is equal to a list of student instances.
Right. Yeah, Robert just put in the chat, and same thing with me. Like when I put 1 as my input, it's not doing anything.
In your runner, did you do this?
Yes.
Interesting. Let me take a look. I don't see it in the chat, so I'm not sure what. Oh, yeah, did you scroll up your terminal?
Yeah, it just lists the options again, and actually I think it just gave me a bunch of instances with like the memories. Doesn't like spit out a pretty list like Lisa, Jesse, all that stuff. But also I try to quit it and it's not breaking.
Okay, let's take a look at your code real quick. Okay, so it looks like now we have everything working. We're able to work through it. If I press 5, I'm able to quit my program. Now I'm able to list those students. Well, now let's take a look at the next portion. The next portion is viewing a single student. It looks like it's giving me the functionality here. It's saying, hey, if you choose the 2, the student ID, it should ask you for a student ID, and then it should find the student by the student ID. Okay, so let's go ahead and copy that. Let's bring that over to our runner. Let's add that choice. Okay, so if somebody were to place choice 2, it's gonna ask them to input the student ID. And I'm actually gonna do a /n here just so that it's a new line. And then after we do the student ID, it's going to say find the student by ID. Okay. And if it finds them, it's going to print their string method. That's weird. Why is it doing str student? We should just do student. Okay. So there's a couple of things here. Looks like we're going to need a dunder method. So that's 1. And 2, we're going to need to create a method for finding a student by ID. So let's tackle the easy one first. Let's look at what the dunder method is supposed to look like. Here we go. So this is what it wants us to return for our dunder method. So now if I go over to student, a student was initialized here. How do I make this into my dunder method? Anyone have any ideas?
A triple string and that, well, the 3 quotes and, an F string.
Okay, so we do 3 quotes and F string. This should go way back here.
Oh, I guess we haven't done the define __ str.
But so then this should be self.name. This one should be what, self.age. And then self.school ID. And you said that we should do the __ str. So I'm assuming you're talking about this. What argument should it take?
Self.
Right, and it should return the following. Okay, so now we have our F string going on. Our F string is going to be able to return self.name, that line, the age, and then ID. Nice. Okay, so we have done their method completed. The other method that we need to create now is being able to find a student by their ID. And that's going to happen here in school. So how can I do that? Right, it looks like it's a method. And this method, if I'm looking at it to the runner, it takes in an argument of student ID. So let's go ahead and create it. It's find student by ID. Sorry, I'm getting confused between all the files. Here you go, school.py. Okay. So df find student by ID. Takes in self, and it needs to take in another argument. So currently right now in my runner, I'm passing it a student ID. What do we want to name the argument that it's going to be taken in other than self? Caleb? What would we want to name this extra argument that we're taking in here? You're muted in case you're talking.
Student ID.
Yeah,
Or
student ID. All right. Okay, so at this point, how would I go about identifying that student? Kendra, what ideas do you have? What do you think we should do to grab one student out of this list?
Loop through the list and try to find that student ID.
Okay, so for stud and self dot students, and then you're saying to find the student ID. How could I find the student ID? So if student ID is what?
Equals stud dot school ID.
Okay,
We're gonna return the student.
yeah, so we'll return the stud. Okay, and if it goes through the entire for loop, maybe we should just print this ID doesn't match any students. Okay. So this looks pretty simple. Looks like we may have what we wanted. So now we run it and let's list all students first so that we can grab an ID. Let's grab Jesse, which is 1, 2, 3, 3, 5. Okay. I go to number 2. It's asking me, hey, enter the student ID. Okay, so here's 1, 2, 3, 3, 5. And when I run it, it triggers. It finds Jesse and it gives me the Thunder method. Hey, here's Jesse, they're age 25 and their ID is 1, 2, 3, 3, 5. What would you like to do? Well, now I would just simply like to quit. Okay, so let's break it down. Everything that we just did. So we first started with our dunder method. We create our dunder method by making the str function. We give it self, and we're just simply returning an f string with the information that we got from the readme. So it's returning the name of the student, dividing it by dashes, returning the age of the student, and that student school ID. Great. Now, if we go take a look at the runner is asking, hey, what ID are you looking for? Right? We give it the ID that it's looking for. And then it says, all right, well, if this is the ID you're looking for, I'm going to go into the school and utilize the find student by ID method. So it goes into the school, triggers the find student by ID method, and passes in the student ID, which is the input that we gave the program. After that, it iterates through each of the students within the list of students that's being returned here. And it checks, hey, if the student ID that was provided by my user matches a student school ID that exists within my school, then we're going to return that student instance. If it goes through the entire loop and doesn't find anyone, it's just going to say, hey, we don't have an ID matching this. Now let's take a look at that. So let's say I want to find a student. I type in some gibberish and it doesn't find them. It just tells me this ID does not match any students. But I did get that none function. I wonder why I'm getting that none function. Where is this none happening?
Could I look at your string method?
Oh. Yes, you can. I'm sorry. I'm going down a rabbit. Nope, still gives me none. Interesting. All right.
I think it's a string method because I'm having something kind of similar.
Oh, you think it's the string method?
I do. I'm having something sort of similar, but it could be unrelated. Okay. No, never mind. You do return.
Wouldn't you return in that one where you just had the print? When you just return that print statement instead of printing it, and you just return the string that said no students.
Oh, I see what you mean. So you're
Yeah,
saying this
you put
is
it in like a return none there, but I think if you just put return and then that string statement, it'll just
return none. And then in the runner, I guess I could switch it up and say if student, then print student. Right? Let's see. Okay, let's say 2. And I type in gibberish. There you go. Now there's no none. It says this ID does not match any students. Okay, let me make sure that it does work with a student though. Okay, so now 2. Okay, and now it does work with a student. All right, saved, easy peasy.
So I have a question about like why you did it that way. Were you just trying to like ensure that that function's like always going to only return like a student object?
Right, so this function says find a student by ID, right? So that's the only thing that it should be returning to me.
Gotcha.
A student by ID, right? And if it can't find a student, then it should tell me that there's nothing there. Otherwise, it could lead me down the wrong path later on.
Gotcha.
All right, and then Anna, I think you had a question.
Yeah, mine is telling me that the tuple object has no attribute school ID.
Interesting. Do you have a comma, a trailing comma at the end of any of these?
In my student class?
Yeah.
No.
Interesting. I'm gonna have to take a look at that one. Let me. Okay, so the question was, how did I get rid of the none statement that was coming back? Well, in the runner, I was printing this student, right? But if I take a look at school.py, my find student by ID wasn't always returning something, right? It was only returning a student if a student actually exists. Otherwise, it was just printing this ID doesn't match anyone. So what I did is I added a return none statement so that if the student by ID didn't return anything, it would give the student in my runner a value of none. And then I can ask, hey, if student does have a value, I want you to print the student. But if it doesn't, because it couldn't find anyone, I don't want you to print anything. Does that answer your question?
Yep, thank you.
Awesome. Brian?
Mine is not finding the student IDs when I'm typing in the exact student IDs that are being listed, but it's just going back to the return, and I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong.
Huh. Okay, let's take a look at that. Let me pause the record. Perfect. So I think that's gonna conclude part 2 of this assignment. We were able to add those 2 features. We can list all students, we can view a student by ID, and we're able to quit our menu. And we have a menu running through the runner. So great. Let's go ahead and take a 10-minute break. And then after this 10-minute break, we're gonna go ahead and go into part 3. And then for part 3, we'll do it in a student-led kind of participation process where you guys will walk me through how to complete part 3 rather than me kind of running through it. So I'll see you all here at 10:40. Thank you so much, everyone. Embarrassing. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and start off here. We're gonna start off by creating this dictionary and adding this add student method. So let's go ahead and start off by copying this. Let's bring that over to the runner, seems like. And let's make our new choice. Oh, hello. Oh, I know what this is. There you go. Oh, that's not even what I wanted to do. Okay, so now let's make our new choice. So now we have elif choice is equal to 3. What should that look like? Well, it should look something like this. Right, it's going to create this dictionary. That dictionary is going to take in a multiple amount of inputs, and then it's going to go and create an instance of that school by adding to a student. Okay, well, what does that look like? Or how can we manage this? Right, what does this add student method, where should it live?
In your school class.
Okay, the school class. What makes you go with the school class?
That's what it was assigned to in the like the one on the runner. Like I said, school dot add students, so.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And also just keep in mind that school is the only class that has access to this list, right? Because if we go to the student doesn't have access to the list. It only returns a list. It's school that has access to it. So it only makes sense that school would be the one that's able to create it and add it to this list. Okay, so let's start creating this function or this method. I apologize. So df and what do we call it? Add student. Easy. So add student. Okay, so now you guys tell me how to build this method, right? We have this information from the runner. How do I build this method? It looks like it takes in a dictionary called student data. Yeah. Where do I go from here?
So you want to create a new instance of student using the double star student, what you named the thing in the method, or like just student info or student data, which should also be passed into the your add student should have self and then that number.
Okay, so it should have self and then what?
Student data or student info.
Okay.
Since you're passing in that dictionary. So you create a student, instance of student, and then you append that student to the self.students.
Okay, seems pretty simple, right? It takes in a student data, it passes it through the Kwargs method to create a new student, and then it appends it to the list of all the students that we have. So let's see if that works. So we run our runner. Let's say I want to add a student. Well, what's the student name? Let's see, Francisco. Why not? What's the student age? Too young. Young at heart.
25.
Yep. And then enter student ID. Okay, student password. Why not make it the same as the ID? Because safety is our priority. All right. So now if I wanted to view that student, well, first let's list all of the students. Well, now we see Francisco is existing. Okay. Let's see if I can grab Francisco. So 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3. And it returns Francisco with the age of 15 and the ID of 11, 22 to 33. Okay, perfect. So it looks like that functionality is done. We're able to add a student and they're able to stay in the list while my runner is running. Okay.
Hey, Francisco.
What's up?
Can you just like go through that method and kind of just explain everything that's happening real quick?
Yeah, definitely. Let's go through. Let's start here from the runner, right? So the user makes the choice of 3. After the user makes the choice of 3, well, we know that the role of what we're creating is going to be a student. So we define the role and the student. After that, we need the name of the set student. So we ask the user to input a name. We need the age. So the user inputs an age. We need an ID. User inputs ID. And we need a password, which means the user inputs a password. So by this point, student data should look something like this. So student data is now equal to role student. It has age 15, which is what I put in there. It has, oh, but it's supposed to be a string. I apologize. Because it's through input. Remember, anything that comes in through input will always come in as string. Then it asks for the school ID, which is also a string, and I think I gave it this. And then I asked for a password, which was not the most secure thing possible. I gave it the same thing as the ID. Right, so by the end of this function, this is what we have. We have student. Oh, I missed the name, didn't I? Yes, I did. Name. Okay, so this is what it looks like by the end of this function, right? After we capture all that student input, all of that user input, we developed a dictionary that has all of my keys necessary to create an instance. So then we call the school method of add a student. So we go over to the school method, we pass in the dictionary, and here we see school method add student. Okay, and we have student data, which is the dictionary that we passed into. Afterwards, in line 13, what we're doing is we're creating a student. And rather than doing something like this, where we would say student, and then say role is equal to student data dot, student data dot get, and then we pass in role, right? And then rather than doing this over and over again for each individual portion of the dictionary, we're just destructuring the dictionary by doing the star method. So now by doing the star method, it's going to go into the dictionary, find the key of role, and then assign that value to the attribute of role. So this is going to create a student, and after it creates a student, it goes to store it. So it goes into itself, so the instance of school. It goes into the attribute of students, which is a list of student objects, and we append that newly created student at the end of the list. And that's why we saw Francisco as number 7, because he's at the end of the list now. Does that answer your question? All right, see 2 thumbs up, not just 1. I got 2 this time. I'll take it. All right. I always find it weird when in reading an object key value when assigned. Is that an actual question, Cody, or was that just making a statement?
Oh, I'm just vibe checking if anybody feels how I feel. Disregard.
Statement, got it. Disregarded. All right. Okay, so now we have a choice 3 completed, and the last thing we need to do is choice 4, which is deleting a record. All right, so it says the last feature we need to implement is the ability to delete a student record. Follow the same procedure as before. First, add a condition to the if statement. What information will you need from the user in order to delete a record? Okay, so I think this one's just telling us to make up our own method for deleting a record. Okay, so let's go into the runner. So how can we delete a student?
We could search by ID since that should be unique.
Okay, well, that sounds
the code from two.
Go ahead. I think there was a question.
Yeah, you're just sorry. I was just saying we could copy the code from 2.
Oh, nice. Okay, perfect. So let's copy the code from 2. And actually, we'll copy it all the way over here. Okay, so it returns that student instance. What should we do now?
Pop the index.
But we don't know the index, right? We just know the value. So do you guys want me to look that up, or can one of you look it up? How do I remove something from a list by its value, not its index?
Can you delete, or it's like DEL?
You can do the self.students.remove.
Okay, let's see. I wonder if we could use DLE. I don't know if, yeah, DL, it looks like DEL doesn't apply to list. That's likely a dictionary function. So yeah, it looks like we're looking at utilizing remove. Okay, so we got self. Oh no, not self. We want school dot students dot remove, and then we want to remove the student, but only if there is a student. Right? Okay, and then if this is successful, we can say, all right, well, print student was deleted. All right, so let's make sure this all works. I'm gonna go ahead and quit this program. I'm gonna run the runner. Okay, I want to see all of the students. So I press option 1. There's all the students. Awesome. Well, what if I want to add a student? Let's go with 3. Let's do myself again. Age, I don't know, 33 this time. School ID, I'm gonna keep it the same thing for the password. All right, so now if I go to view all students, I should see Francisco. If I want to find Francisco, I can find him by ID. 1, 2, 3, 3. Okay, there's Francisco. What if I want to remove Francisco? Well, I pass in 4, 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3. And now we see student was deleted. And if I go to list all students one more time, we can see that Francisco is no longer there. And now I can quit. And that's it. Easy peasy.
From your find by ID, when you were returning, like, did you end up returning that? I thought we had changed it to return a string statement.
Oh, let's take a look at that. Where is my school? Find student by ID.
No, you did have it returning none. Sorry. I just thought somebody had mentioned changing it to return the string, so.
Ah, I see. Yeah, no problem at all. Any other questions? No one has any questions over everything we covered today? We went over a lot. There's got to be questions.
Hey, Francisco, can you go back to the runner real quick so I can see what you have for option 4 again? If remove student, print students deleted. I just want to follow the logic on for line 34. School.students.remove student. I guess I'm just trying to trace back because we've done a lot. Where did we establish? Where's that list of students established in which class and like where's the active list being created and tracked?
Yeah, so that's happening here in that's happening here in school, right? So in line 9, we have the students, and that's loading a list of students. But that list is permanently assigned there, right? We will always have this list as long as this program is running. And that program is continuously running because we have it inside of a while loop, right? The moment I quit it, the program shuts down, all those instances go away, it all gets thrown away, right? But as of right now, because I'm inside of a while loop, it's all saved inside of a list in self.students. So the logic here is it's going to find the student by ID. And once it finds that student, it's going to go into the school, into the list of students that it belongs to school, and it's going to remove the student that was returned by find student by ID. All right. And once it removes it, it gives us the print statement of student was deleted.
Okay, and then that makes sense. And then where did we generate this list of students again? I believe it's from the CSV file.
Yep, we generated. So in this all students function, we're going into the CSV file, grabbing each one of those CSV file rows and turning them into dictionaries. And then we're creating class instances and appending them to this list. And that list is what gets returned as the value for this function, which is why in school, we have this list of students.
Okay, I got it. That makes sense. Thank you.
Of course. All right, Brian.
Yeah, so just kind of so I can see if my comprehension, we've got students and staff, and then we've got school. So are basically students and staff are aspects of composition for in the school, like the school has a student, the school has a staff.
Exactly. Yeah, this is composition. Line 8 and line 9 is composition. A school has staff and a school has students.
Awesome. And then also, could you just kind of go over Kwargs a tiny bit?
Yeah, I could definitely break down Kwargs again. Let me see if I could answer Cody's question first, and then afterwards I'll move on to Kwargs. Go ahead, Cody.
Yeah, mine's like super quick. It's just if we wanted, like we were making this list and we added students to it, if we wanted to make it more permanent so that every time you open the program like they existed, it would just be like we would write into the CSV file instead.
Exactly. So right before you quit your program, you would write all the data. Essentially, in order for that data to live, you need somewhere to store that data. And if
Yeah.
it's not a database, it needs to be some sort of text or CSV file.
Okay, cool. All right, I'm done. Thank you.
Of course. All right, so Kwargs. Let's see. How can I break this down? Let me open up. I'm trying to think of a simpler way to explain Kwargs here. Okay, so I'll do it here. Here we have our init method, right? And our init method takes in all this information. It takes in name, age, role, school ID, and password. Now, when I go to create an instance of a student, I can do it by simply just saying, hey, the name is Francisco. The role, oh no, I think the next one is age. Age is 12. The role is student. The school ID is 112233. And the password is 112233. All right, so that works. This would automatically work. Okay, well, what happens if I wanted to specify? Well, I could also specify by saying, hey, the name is equal to this. Here's the age. Here's the student. This one, I think, was password. Nope, this one's school ID. And here's the password. All right. So I can do both of these. Now, I can't do this one and place it out of order. So if I were to do something like this, well, that would mess up my entire program, right? This would essentially put the name as 112233, the age is Francisco, the role is 12, the school ID is student, and the password is 112223, right? Which is breaking. It's not going to work. So this would break it. So breaks. Oh, that's not what I meant to do. There you go. Breaks because of improper order. Okay. Now down here, I can do something like that. I can also take this and place it down here, and this will still work, right? This will still be able to read everything correctly because it's going to grab the password, go to the password attribute and set it correctly. It's going to go to the name attribute and set it, and so on, right? So we know that this would work correctly, but we wouldn't be able to do something like this because it's not in the proper order. Does that make sense so far? Right, we all understand how this instance can be created if we detail everything. Okay, great. Well, what if I have a dictionary, right? And let's just call it student data. And that dictionary has a key of name, and it holds a name. That dictionary also has a key of role. What did I put student there? This was supposed to be role. Yes, just let me do it too. All right, I have a key of role. I named this one student. What else does it need? Oh, it needs age. And I have this one say 12. Password. And this one 112233. And this is school ID. Which is also 112233. Okay. So now we've gone over this. This one works because it's in proper order. It works. It's a shortcut with proper ordered data. Okay, we know this to work because I'm specifying the data and their correct values, right? I'm specifying an attribute and assigning it a value, which are the arguments that are up here, right? So we know these two work. Well, all I'm essentially doing when I create a dictionary like this is I'm grabbing an attribute such as name, and I'm giving it the value that I want to assign to that attribute, right? And I keep doing that. And it doesn't matter about the order, because just like we established, I can do this backwards and it still works because it knows it's going to be assigned to password. So now I have age all the way over here. But that's essentially saying, hey, grab the attribute of age and give it the value of 12, right? These two or these three methods are all essentially the same. Does that make sense so far? Okay, looks like that makes sense. So now if I have these three methods, right? Well, how does that actually make a class with that dictionary? Well, in order to make a class with that dictionary, all I would have to do is destructure that dictionary. And now by doing this, right here on line 35, all I'm doing is essentially grabbing this dictionary, and under the hood, or what's happening behind the scenes underground, is this dictionary and the student class is essentially turning into this. So these two are equivalents of one another. And that's how the star method works. Did that answer your question, Brian?
Yeah, that did. Thank you so much for going over that again.
Of course, yeah, no problem. It's all just syntactical sugar. Yep. But it's fancy and it looks nice, so people appreciate it. All right. It doesn't seem like there are any other questions. So if there are no questions for me, I have a question for all of you. So if I take a look at my staff and I take a look at my student and I put them side by side to one another, I have noticed that I have a lot of repeated code, especially around my initializer. How could I create a class that both my staff and student can inherit from in order to share some code?
You can create a person class.
Okay, let's take a look at that. CD or CD classes, class, touch, person. Okay. So I say class person.
And add def in it with their with self, name, age, role, and password.
Huh. So that's interesting. I see what attributes you're telling me to copy. Why is it that you don't want employee ID in there?
I feel like you'd have to change too many things in the rest of the code to make it worthwhile.
Right.
Like because it's employee and student ID.
Yeah, so one of them is employee ID and the other one is school ID, right? They're different attributes, they're not in common. They may have different functionality in both programs. So this isn't that's not something that we would want to inherit. Okay, perfect. So what can I do here? How do I finish off this initializer, Kate?
You would just have to like I would probably just copy and paste everything from underneath class staff except for the ID part and then put it under person.
Nice. Awesome. So now I have all this information, everything's there. But now I noticed the all staff and I have an all students, right? They're both pretty similar in name. And it sounds like it's a method that should be required by both of these classes. What kind of method does that sound like? Right? It doesn't sound like a class method, but when I'm thinking about inheritance and the way that I can interact with other classes, what kind of method can I enforce here to make sure that both the staff and student class have this method named all staff or all students?
Abstract method.
Okay, great. So how do I apply that?
Do from lowercase ABC import capital ABC and then comma abstract method.
All right. And then let's see, John, how do I actually put this abstract method into action?
At below init, you
Mhm.
put add abstract method. Then are we gonna define, yeah, def all student?
Yeah, let's just make it all members. That way it's common across.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
Okay,
Okay. Then pass, I guess.
perfect. Okay, we're almost there, but it seems like I'm missing something up here. What am I missing? Does anyone know?
It's the
You need to-
parenthesis.
Go ahead, John.
After person, parentheses ABC.
Okay, perfect. So that seems to be working correctly. Well, now let's do some refactoring of our code, right? So now we have this student class. So now let's say from classes dot person import person. Okay, so now how do I apply that inheritance? Let's see, what do we have? Clarice, how do I apply that inheritance of person into the student class?
Student parentheses, person.
Okay. Okay, so now that I have that inheritance, what, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I didn't know if I needed to keep going.
Yeah, go ahead. If you want, keep going, keep going.
Okay, it's like under define, and you would put super, like above self, that name. Yeah, dot init with the underscores again. And in the parentheses, all the things you're importing from person.
Okay, great. What about all these attributes? Do I still need them?
No.
Okay, perfect. So I don't need these attributes anymore. All right, and then we have this abstract method called all members. Should this still be all students or should I just name it all members?
All members.
All right. So switch that to all members. Okay, so that's made. This is made. And I think I'm utilizing the wrong one. Let me see. Yeah, I want abstract class method, not abstract method. I apologize. There you go. That way you can still access the class, takes itself, or CLS, I guess. No, let's go with CLS. All right. Okay, so now we have all this information. Everything's working great. Well, what about staff? How do I apply it to staff, Derek?
Yeah, same thing. So your staff is a person. You can remove everything except employee ID, replace that with a super method.
All right, so staff is a person, and then replace everything before employee ID with a super method.
And then you just got to define your abstract method as it pertains to the staff.
Members. All right, so now we changed this name of all staff and all students. Where else do I need to make that change?
In the runner.
Pass.
In school.py, right? Because I'm calling all staff and all students. So now I'm just going to change this to members. And this to members. Okay, great. Let's make sure that this still works correctly. Change directory one back. I can run ls. There's my runner. Okay, let me see if I can view all of my students. All right, all of my students are still there. Let me see if I can still view an individual student. Let's say 1, 3, 3, 4, 5. That worked. Let's add a student. Okay, let's list them. All right, there's FR. Let's go ahead and remove a student. All right, and now we can view all students. The student has been removed and we can quit. Great, and we just essentially refactored our code, right? We made something that they can grab from. We have this abstract method as well, this abstract class method that exists both in school and in the student. I mean, both in the student and the staff. And I think that's going to be it for our exercise, everyone. Thank you so much. And we actually finished in perfect amount of time. Does anyone have any closing questions before we call it quits here? Okay, if there are no questions for me, then I hope this was useful to everyone. Our assessment will be released during lunchtime after our weekly retro. The next thing we have is our weekly retro in 10 minutes. So let's take a 10-minute break, kind of decompress. I'll start working on pushing these notes and getting the YouTube lecture downloaded, and I'll see everyone here in 10 minutes. Thank you so much, everyone. Matt, what's up?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask to see your remove function again, but if that's gonna take away from you uploading, I can just get it from the upload.